make. I don't know how much interest there is. I've got a couple of topics that I can kind of go off into now. I've got something where we can talk in depth about JavaScript, iframe, exploits, the problems that we see as a provider in a case study. Or I can go into DNS amplification attacks, or I can do both and really screw the next guy who has to talk. Show of hands, that was probably the next guy. Show of hands, who wants me to talk more about iframes? Not a lot, which means most of you are iframe authors. So we'll kind of zip through this. We have a real problem with customers who have hosted websites with malicious iframes that are installed. And this is an example case that came along a couple of months ago. Customer had their htaccess file modified. The index.html was changed to include the malicious iframe. Do you know what I mean with malicious iframe? Doesn't matter. I'm going to keep talking. Turns out that the customer's compromise was actually on their PC from which their content management software was running. And every single time they would do an FTP upload of their site, the malware on the computer in their office would automatically say, oh look, here is an FTP put of an index.html or HTML file. I'll go ahead and include this less than iframe blah 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 automatically. So when the good guy looks at his computer in his office, the code is clean. Yet when we look on our server, it's compromised. Literally during the FTP session, the malware injected the iframe. And this is an incredibly common insertion of iframes at the moment. This is what the htaccess looked like. You can kind of figure out who was behind this kit. Those of you who read these things, I hope, Thomas, you get this, if you're still here. Nope, you left. Oh, no, there you are. You can read that, right? It's an Apache thing. So what was happening here was basically every time somebody was sent to this website from a refer request from a search engine matching any of those regular expressions, then it would automatically rewrite it and send things off to a certain IP address and a certain domain in Russia in order to download more malware. So that same site also came with a JavaScript that looked a bit like this, slightly obfuscated. I do not find this human readable. I'm sure there's at least 5 or 6 of you in this room who do. After the first level of deobfuscation, you get a little bit closer. Now it's just escaped. Now I can understand it a little bit more. I definitely know that it's some JavaScript that's going on there. I have a little bit more to work with. Run it through another decoder. Ah, there we go. Now we've got some information. We can see that the JavaScript, it was an iframe to a JavaScript that had more JavaScript that went to another iframe to pull in the data from that particular location. Ah, fine. Someone go take a look at that. So when you go to that location and look at the malware, what the bad guys did was actually modify the 403 forbidden document to return more malware rather than actually having to host the malware on the server. Now, if you followed that, you're definitely at the right conference and the right talk. But the long and the short of it is the bad guy modified the way the web server was returning error codes, or forbidden in this case. So all he had to do was point to any URL which was not going to be able to be accessed, and the malware would be returned just like that, which made it really frustrating for the other side to figure out, because he goes looking for the .diff go.php. Ain't there, right? It's just not there. Doesn't have to be. And of course, this led to the malware, and this was more information about the site. As you can see, that same website was filled with several different exploits, ActiveX, JavaScript, PDF, 0 days. There's a number of things you can do about it. Some of these are realistic, some of them are not. Turning off JavaScript entirely leads to a really interesting internet experience these days. I don't know how many of you believe in the myth of Web 2.0, but all of you twits that are into twitting, no doubt, would probably find it not nearly as interesting. Some of these you can do, some you can't. Certainly I recommend NoScript if you can use it inside of Firefox. Right, social engineering. I understand that more than one of you are at this event right now because you socially engineered your way in past the organizers. Hands up if you did that. Ah, well, only had one person actually admit to it. Organizers? No, just kidding. So social engineering and that problem is something that's really been affecting our customer base, and you can understand why. You receive an email that says, click here to see Angelina Jolie doing something interesting with a watermelon. I'll click. And next thing you know, it says, oh, you got to install this codec. Well, most of our customers don't know what a codec is, much less how to spell it. And so what do? They do what they think they must to get what they want. They want to see Angelina Jolie with a watermelon, darn it. And they're going to install the codec if that's what gets it to them. Doesn't work that way, guys. So social engineering attacks are incredibly popular at the moment. And a lot of these are being propagated through MSN, chat system, Hives, Facebook, the popular environments. Why? That's where the masses are, who probably aren't terribly well secured, and very easy rich pickings targets. And then you can get into more advanced social engineering, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This is a great example of social engineering that came out a couple of, beginning of the year, 24th of February. Jack Straw from the UK Justice Secretary, he admitted that his webmail account was compromised by Nigerians that were then using that saying, "Hi, I'm Jack Straw, I need help." And so everything looked completely valid, and his point was that at least it wasn't his ministerial account, it was his account associated with where he's a minister of parliament from. And so he says, yeah, but at least it's okay, it's not my main account, it's another account, so it's all right. And I don't know if it says, I started getting phone calls from various constituents asking if I was really in Nigeria and really needed $3,000. So there were a number of people at least who had enough doubt to say, is this possible, is this true? So it made it past the first filter right away. We're going to zip through this one. How many people here build web applications? Okay, quite a few. How many of you actually understand how to secure web applications? I don't believe you. So web application security, you think that, but web application security is a real minefield at the moment. Anybody who builds a web app has to have a completely different mindset in order to properly secure it. Doing positive input validation, doing protections against SQL injection, to do the types of things you need to do, you have to think about alternative use case scenarios or abuse case scenarios which actually protect your business and your customers' data. And that's not always easy. You have to think about, and you can see this right here, there's a whole layer of things that are involved. Thinking about the hardware, the machine, the boot records, the operating system, applications, all dependencies, all libraries. You're using PHP, it's got built-in libraries, it's got all this other stuff going, extra plugins you've done, plus the user code that you've installed as well. So actually securing a web app isn't just about making sure your PHP looks right. There's a lot more behind it. Right, server security. Yeah, this goes on with the web app stuff. Right now, actually, there's a really good effort by several of the search engines, especially Google, and I don't know if there's anybody working here from Google, but several of the search engines are now trying to tell you in advance if the website that you've searched for might contain malicious code. And there was a fantastic example of this a couple of weeks ago, where Google returned one of the most malicious web code distribution points on the internet. Microsoft Corporation. It was an oops on their part, but basically any query that you put into Google would say this site is considered harmful, don't click on it. Now, people kind of laugh this off on the internet, isn't that funny? Of course, the first thing I did was that query and make a screenshot for presentations, but the power that Google has over what site is safe and what site is not safe is something that we all need to think about. Is this too much power? Is it the right amount of power? Are they doing good, or have they gone just that little bit extra further? I'm going to skip this. It's kind of interesting, but we don't have time, really. This is a sample of malicious URLs that are injected into our customers' websites every single day. I get about between 500 to 700 remote websites that have also been compromised, and those sites, therefore, are hosting malicious code, whether it be Perl bots, Windows executables, doesn't really matter. All of this stuff is injected into our customer websites in order to try to gain access or distribute malicious code. And I've even graphed this. Oops, sorry. That. You can see that there's a certain pattern over the course of the day as these web applications